So in all my videos, I've made it pretty obvious that I haven't been a fan of the last 4 seasons, 15 through 17 and then 0. And I know it seems like I don't like them because they don't follow my theories to the T, but I actually have a lot more reasons why I don't like them. A lot of them being very similar to everyone else's complaints about them. But there are a lot of major differences. Now, Season 13 was one of my favorite seasons we've gotten so far, and after Season 13, I was hoping to see more things like it. Since 13 ended with Church sending messages all throughout the galaxy to the UNSC, the aliens, Sister, Junior, I thought that would have been cool to see the UNSC and the aliens show up to Chorus, with Junior and Sister hanging out with the Reds and Blues on Junior's ship or something. Maybe a few weeks after the events of Season 13, and we could see Phyllis in the orb, which they could have used to save her from Chairman's ship in a very Red versus Blue way. I think that would have been a way more original way of bringing Sister back into the story, and plus she could be there from 15 to 17, which is weird that she didn't try to help prove her brother innocent, and then she showed up at the end of 16 because she had business on Chorus conveniently and heard someone talking about the Reds and Blues needing help. That would have been a lot more natural way to have Sister come back. We could get some insight on Junior, we could see the UNSC, the aliens, and Chorus teaming up to fight the rest of the mercs that throughout the galaxy. You know, that intricate web of politicians and clients that worked with the chairman, which went nowhere. Even get more mercs hunting more alien tech, just like we saw in 0, but maybe done a little bit better than that. And since Chairman was going to use the weapons from Chorus to reincite the war with the aliens, and a cut plot point that Miles wanted for Season 13, they could have further explored that and shown the aliens' perspective of everything that's happened with them throughout the show. Plus, I was hoping to see the continued story of Mercs and the rest of Cyrus's story with Locus and Felix. Plus, any of the stories brought up in Season 14 could have continued as well, as smaller plot threads. I know I make a lot of jokes about Joe Nicolosi, the guy who made 15, 16, and 17, but he actually did do a lot of stuff that I thought was cool and that I wanted to see for a while. It's just like he did them by crossing them off the list in the goofiest way possible, because he thought it would be funny to troll us. And don't get me wrong, these 4 seasons actually have a lot of cool things in them. Starting with Season 15's villain, Temple, and his team. So the leader of the Blues and Reds, Temple, I actually like as a character. Sometimes he gets a bit over the top, but overall I think he's a cool concept. Plus it's good to see someone with Church's armor again. But I don't like his backstory, and I'm not a fan of the giant scheme he's got going on in this season. A lot of people have already said this. The fact that the Blues and Reds are the original Reds and Blues, and the Reds and Blues were recruited for Bloodgulch based off of the Blues and Reds personality profiles doesn't make any sense. It contradicts everything about the characters throughout the show. There's a lot of things about the Blues and Reds that exist in their personality that don't happen with the Reds and Blues until way after they were recruited. Sarge wasn't a colonel until Chorus, which is way after Project Freelancer, but Surge was. According to Season 14, when the Reds and Blues were recruited for Bloodgulch, Caboose and Donut weren't even part of the original team. And Caboose having that unique helmet didn't happen until way later. Everyone else had that helmet start, and he had the same one as them. Donut didn't have pink armor right away, and Tucker didn't have the armor he had initially. Flowers was part of the team who had the armor, the teal armor, and when Caboose and Donut were recruited for the team by mistake, Sister, Jenkins, and Andersmith were on that roster, but there's not copies of them. And the fact that Biff dies and Griff quits so they don't see him until later is just way too convenient. If that were a factor and the Blues and Reds weren't actually copies of the Reds and Blues, I could actually get past that. You know, we haven't seen very many people with Griff's armor color, so if Temple had a friend that looked like Griff, and then Griff just happened to be part of the reason why they beat Temple at the end, because he couldn't shoot Griff, that'd be fine if they weren't all copies of the Reds and Blues. So then I could get behind that part of Temple's backstory. This is what I would have rather had Temple and his team doing. We still could have had Temple have his backstory with Biff, where Biff got killed by freelancers during a training exercise, and that could be why he wants to kill freelancers. We could have still had the hunting freelancers arc. But we also saw that he teamed up with the Red and Blue Grunts from Season 3 and 4. And they had the ability to come back from the dead. And I had said before that that seems like it could connect to the time distortion unit because Wyoming loops himself back alive every time he fails. So the director would have been experimenting on them with that technology. There's time travel. They built a time machine. What if Temple led the red and blue grunts and they created a time machine not to power a drill and destroy the UNSC headquarters, but because the time machine was made intentionally to help Krovos? They were religious nuts in season 3 and 4. That could be the religion they're following. Whatever happened on Chorus, whether it be the Purge being destroyed or the Temple of Communication sending out that message to every device in the galaxy, it would have changed Temple, and he could have been one of the red and blue grunts until that point where now he is the leader of the red and blue grunts. So therefore, we would have Krovos minions through the whole trilogy. It would be the red and blue grunts. I'm surprised they didn't do that. As far as the blues and reds being just copies of the reds and blues, I felt like that's something we didn't need to see again in Red versus Blue. Like, the lieutenants were already somewhat copies of some of the reds and blues. And we had Dos Point0 in season 11. We had Iowa, who's basically a ripoff of Caboose, even though he was kind of funny and unique in his own way. Did we need more copies of the reds and blues? Like, in season 14, we already had like 17 versions of Sarge. Like, how many more times do we need to see copies of the reds and blues in Red versus Blue? Plus, recruiting soldiers that are just like the blues and reds because they're the only ones that stay at a stalemate contradicts the fact that Wash said red and blue bases don't have anything to do unless command gives them orders or a freelancer sent there. They're all meant to be at a stalemate until they're told otherwise. Then the fact that Carolina, Tex, and Doc met them all before the Reds and Blues, and then that's the first place Doc goes after Chorus, and he's never mentioned them at all, is just a bit contrived to me. What sucks about Sim Troopers being the villains of Season 15 is, unfortunately, the Reds and Blues ended up being downgraded so that they wouldn't have the Sim Troopers be so easily defeated. You know, Tucker doesn't have the metasuit, Griff doesn't have the Griff shot, Caboose loses freckles, and I know a lot of this stuff I'm mentioning is due to the game engine they used, but because of Season 14 and 17, we know they can use multiple game engines, and we know with Zero they can fully animate seasons, so at this point in time, they need to stop losing the things that they earned. Plus, if the Sim Troopers are hunting freelancers, why didn't they think of having the Sim Troopers, Temple, and the Red and Blue Grunts use freelancer tech? Especially if a lot of freelancer tech after Season 10 was upgraded by Charon to not need freelancer AI. The Reds and Blues could have gone up against them and not have to be downgraded. So their overall plan and motivation throughout Season 15 was that they wanted to hunt down the freelancers and kill them. Specifically Carolina because of what her and Tex did to Biff. But then they wanted to go to war with the UNSC for allowing Project Freelancer to do what they did in the first place. Then they wanted to build a drill to drill through the planet and destroy the UNSC headquarters, which the Reds and Blues guessed on a whim based off a map in Temple's lair. And it just so happens they built a time machine to run that drill. That's a lot of stuff going on. That's about as absurd as this plan.
We'll need a good cover story to explain his disappearance. People will wonder what happened to Florida.
Leave that all to me, sir.
Counselor, what did you just do?
Sir, I thought that if we blew up the state of Florida, people would forget that the Agent Florida existed.
That's the best damn idea I've ever heard.
Aggressive tendencies lead to drama. Ain't changing shit. Fuck the karma. Let it be just what it is. No matter what, I handle biz. Pistols drawn, better squeeze. Casket bound. If you freeze, shells fly. Bodies bleed. Me a...
First off, the fact the Blues and Reds are running around attacking UNSC facilities and making it look like the Reds and Blues were doing it on behalf of Chorus doesn't make sense to me because, one, there are a lot of other Reds and Blues. Two, there's no Griff, there's a church, there's no Carolina and Wash. Second, because the UNSC wants to go to war with Chorus because of this, because Chorus wants to stay independent from the UNSC. Doesn't make much sense because Kimball fought for so long with the Chorus War. Why wouldn't she want to team up and get help from the UNSC? Why stay independent? And why would the UNSC push that matter so heavily? Secondly, just to prove that they're not guilty, why wouldn't Kimball grab the Reds and Blues and say, okay, we need to hold on to you until the actual crimes are committed again so they'll see it's not actually you? Why risk a war with the UNSC just so the Reds and Blues can stay retired. That goes totally against her character. She wouldn't risk another war just so they could be retired, when there are easier solutions to that problem. A problem which didn't need to happen because this whole copycat fugitives thing, we've seen 1,000 times. I wasn't a fan of how season 15 said there was a 10-month gap between 13 and 15. It seems kind of their way of saying the whole Chorus Charon situation's been dealt with now, so now we can focus on our story. All that's over, now our story. Now the UNSC is focusing their efforts on Chorus. And because the Chorus issue with the UNSC literally goes nowhere in the rest of the trilogy, I feel like that didn't need to be a plot point in this trilogy. And the UNSC could have just been focusing their efforts that whole time on everything left over from Chorus and Charon. And faking that Church was still alive added to the giant convoluted plot that eventually led to where it was. And of course Church wasn't alive. I feel like they could have used a different way to get Caboose to learn that Church is dead and won't be coming back and accept that. Such as use the next 2 seasons, 16 and 17, which are time travel plots, to have Caboose encounter and get over the problem. And since 16 and 17's plot has nothing to do with season 15 other than that small moment of time travel at the end, Temple and his team being Krovos worshippers would have tied that season to the last 2 seasons, 16 and 17. And hell, Temple might have been a better minion for Krovos than Genkins was. He has a better motivation than just pure chaos. And honestly, Jenkins himself could have factored into Temple's plot somehow. You know, Jenkins, he's a simulation trooper. Georgia, who everyone says he's connected to, is a freelancer. Sim troopers hunting freelancers. Time hopping to explain his different appearances through the timeline. There you go. Especially if the aliens played a part in that trilogy. The Red and Blue grunts going through time to kill freelancers would have been the perfect motivation for the Reds and Blues to time travel in 16 and 17, or even 15, which would lead to fracturing the timeline. Or they could go back in time and think they're fixing the timeline by saving freelancers because they think maybe the Red and Blue grunts went back in time to kill them, but really, they're led to believe this, but actually they're fucking up the timeline by going back and saving them because the Red and Blue grunts killed them in the past. This could connect to the continuity error in Recovery 1 where the meta killed certain freelancers that we didn't know about, you know? There were extra freelancers in Recovery 1 that didn't have AI that we heard died. I mentioned 3 of them in my Meta and Wash video. Plus, they missed an opportunity in Season 16. They had Tucker be the one to accidentally kill Flowers, when that should have been one of the Blues and Reds, maybe Temple or Bucky. But in this situation, it would just be Temple or one of the Red and Blue grunts. I liked, in Season 15, the inclusion of the character Agent Illinois. The backstory that Carolina gave while she's explaining him was really cool, and I wish I'd have seen more of him, but then they kill him off screen. And I feel like his character could have been a lot more in that season, or that trilogy. Like, instead of just having Carolina and Tex fight again in the canyon where Biff dies with the Blues and Reds, why wouldn't that be, like, part of the reason why Illinois didn't care about rank, you know? He took it too seriously, and then he accidentally killed Biff in trying to be selfish, and then he's like, you know what, this isn't worth it. This isn't even an enemy soldier. I'm just going to do my job, and then I'm going to retire. And then, you know, we could have gotten a lot more with that character. That would work into the story where they're trying to save freelancers in time. We wouldn't have to worry about a plot that had Sarge and Doc betray the Reds and Blues, and only have Doc get shit on for the rest of the trilogy, and not Sarge for that decision. Like, I know the Reds and Blues like to shit on each other from time to time, but I figured after the Band of Brothers moment in Season 13, they wouldn't be so hateful to each other like they are in this season. Plus, we wouldn't have to worry about that scene that no one talks about where Tucker's literally thinking he's leading forces against the UNSC. How are you not talking about this? That is a big deal. Tucker thinking he's leading forces against the UNSC. Even though it was just a video game, still. I know this would remove a lot of plot from Season 15, but personally I just felt like a lot of Season 15 was pointless, especially with all the meta jokes and the movie references we could have cut out and saved time. Jax and Dylan still could have been in this trilogy, but instead of Jax constantly wasting time with references to everything under the sun other than the plot of the story, Dylan could have gotten the story of a lifetime. Time travel, everything from the past seasons could be explained through this season, and she'd have the story of a lifetime. Not because they're fugitives, but because of what they did on Chorus as heroes. Don't get me wrong, if this story weren't Red vs. Blue, it probably would have been way better. Adding it to Red vs. Blue is what I think kind of messed it up. I know a lot of Red vs. Blue fans said they liked the idea of exploring the UNSC's crimes, but honestly, that's the whole point of what they'd be doing if they were going after Charon in Season 13 and beyond. Charon worked for a corrupt member of the UNSC, the chairman, Malcolm Hargrove. That would be exploring the UNSC's crimes while also working with the good version of the UNSC. If we already have a version of that story in progress, why ignore it so you can make a brand new version of that? It's not like they could do a story where they overthrow the UNSC, because that'd be completely derailing the video games, which I don't know if they would do. And honestly, that'd be just as mind-blowing as them trying to save the universe with some time travel scheme. Like Eruption Fang said, that's too big of a thing for the Reds and Blues to deal with. Why would they be the ones to deal with it? But that's the thing. I actually like that they brought time travel back into Red vs. Blue. However, I wouldn't have had it been this giant timeline be destroyed plot, so them just going around time messing things up to cause it to collapse like Jenga wouldn't be something that I would have written in the first place. It could have been a smaller time travel story that involved Temple and the Red and Blue Grunts, but it would have involved everything that happened in the show, not just random references through time. While I've touched upon this concept in my other Red vs. Blue theory videos, I think it's time for me to talk about how I feel like 16 and 17 could have handled that idea.